Thanks for checking out this video. For a full list of materials used in this project, head down to the description below and click on Show More. We're going to make our flower bracelet with some SuperDuos, some 2 or 3 millimeter crystals, and I have these 3 millimeter sunflower. And then we're also going to use some 8-ohs. And this is all we're going to need for the bracelet, other than, of course, a thread and needle. I'm going to begin by picking up one of my 8-ohs, and I'm going to use this as my stop bead. So just let that 8-oh fall most of the way down your thread. Leave yourself just a short tail, and then go back through your 8-oh with your needle, and you've got your stop bead here. We're then going to pick up a SuperDuo and another 8-oh, a SuperDuo and another 8-oh, and continue this pattern of SuperDuo and 8-oh until we have 8 SuperDuos. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and my 8th SuperDuo. So once you have that 8th SuperDuo on, oops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Once you have that 8th SuperDuo on, you should be beginning with your stop bead and then ending with your SuperDuo. 8 SuperDuos and 8 8-oh seed beads. You're going to take your needle and thread and just go around sort of in a circle here and take your needle and go back through your stop bead. And the first SuperDuo. And just give that a little tug and make sure you don't have any slack in your thread. I'm going through the next 8-oh and the next SuperDuo just to make this a little bit tighter. It just helps if you go through a few more beads. And now what I'm going to do is take my needle and thread and go through that open hole in the SuperDuo where my thread is coming out. So my thread is coming out of the bottom hole, and I'm going to go through the top or open hole. So you will see the thread a little bit on the side of your bead. I'm going to use my needle to connect all of these SuperDuos so that I'm taking my needle and passing through all of the open holes. And as I do that, it'll pull all the SuperDuos in towards the center. So it'll take those ends of the SuperDuo that are sticking out, and it'll pull them in towards the center. And you want to go around, go through all your SuperDuos, go through all those open holes until they all get pulled into the center. And I like to go around and then through a few more beads just to get a nice grip on that and make sure that it's nice and tight. So now, before we move on, we're going to add our center crystal. So we're coming out one of those holes in our SuperDuos, and we're just going to pick up one of our crystals, go to the SuperDuo opposite of the SuperDuo where your thread is coming out. So just completely opposite across your little circle of SuperDuos, and go through the inside hole, the hole that you just connected. So you're going to go through that inside facing hole. And then you can see I turn my flower around, and I'm going to go back through the crystal and through my SuperDuo on the other side. Oops. And if you've got a studio like ours, you might pick up some random earrings too as you're working. So that is not part of our project. You can put that one back. So here I've got my crystal in the center. Now you may be wondering at this point why I didn't start by picking up all my SuperDuos in the center with the center and then adding the 8-Os after that. And I've done that and it makes it a little too tight. So then the crystal doesn't quite sit right. And when we attach this piece to the next piece, we're going to attach it. We're going to make that second piece just like we made this piece. So I like to start out making them all the same instead of using two different techniques. So here we have our first little flower. I'm going to go through the top hole, the hole that is part of this outside circle here where I've got my SuperDuo 8-O, SuperDuo 8-O. So I'm going to jump up to that top hole of the SuperDuo. And then I'm going to go through the 8-O. So here I'm going to start adding flowers. And you can see here I have my little chain started. And I'm going to start adding the next flower. So I need a second color of SuperDuo. You can, of course, do this all in one color, but I love the look of some different colors here to make it look like a real garden. We're going to pick up a SuperDuo, and then we're going to take our needle and thread and go through the second hole of the SuperDuo and give a nice little tug. So we've got our thread nice and tight there. Pick up one more SuperDuo, let it fall down, and go through the open hole of the SuperDuo and through the 8-O. So we've just added two SuperDuos that are sharing an 8-O with another pair of SuperDuos directly opposite of them. We're going to go through the hole in the SuperDuo, and then we're going to go through the holes in the bottom of those SuperDuos and go up again through the SuperDuo and the 8-O. And I'm just reinforcing this. That's all I'm doing at this point, is just reinforcing that connection. So I go through the SuperDuos and the 8-O again, just to make sure that's a secure connection, since this is what will be connecting all those pieces together. So you're going to get to this point, and then we're going to continue making our flower just like we did in the first step. We now have this connection point established. And as I said, we're just going to continue here making the flower just as we did in the first step. But of course, we have these two SuperDuos already added. So we're not going to have to add as many SuperDuos and 8-Os. We're going to continue with the same pattern. So I have my SuperDuo here, and I'm going to pick up an 8-O. And I'm going to continue to pick up a SuperDuo and an 8-O until I have my 8 SuperDuos with those 8-Os in between. And remember, you do already have those two SuperDuos here at the beginning. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and my 7th, and my 8th, and then I need that 8-O to sit against the next SuperDuo. So we should have picked up 6 new SuperDuos. We're using the 2 that we added here at the connection point, and we've got 8-Os sitting in between. Pass through the SuperDuo, the 8-O, and the SuperDuo again here in your connection. And I like to go through another 8-O and SuperDuo because it just gives me a little bit better grip here. And like we did in the previous step, we're going to then go to that open hole of the SuperDuo and start connecting the SuperDuos through the holes that we haven't gone through yet. So we're going through all those open holes. And as we do that, we're going to pull the center, or we're going to pull those super duos into the center so that they sit like a little flower. And once you've gone through all of those centers and pulled it in, I like to give it a nice little push to make sure it's nice and flat. And once you've done that, we can then add our crystal in the center. We'll just pick up one crystal, go through the SuperDuo directly opposite the SuperDuo that you're coming out of, and making sure that you're keeping your thread tight the whole way. And back through the crystal, and then back through that SuperDuo. We're then going to take our needle and thread and go through the flower and just trace our thread path. We're just going to go through our SuperDuos until we get to the next place where we need to make a connection. And we want to take our needle and thread and make sure that we're passing through the right hole of the SuperDuo. So I've gone around, my needle and thread are on this like inside track of the SuperDuos here, right next to the crystal. So I'm actually going past the 8/0 here where I want to make the connection. And I'm going to take my needle and thread and go through the SuperDuo, through that bottom or outside hole and through the 8/0. And then I will be in position here to add my next connection and my next flower. So you want to go, if you are a little confused about where to put that connection, you've got your 8/0 here and you want to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So your 8/0 connection, or the 8/0 that you want to be coming out of to make that connection, is going to be 4 8/0s from the 8/0 that you made the previous connection. So just directly opposite of that previous 8/0. So now we're coming out of the 8/0 and we're going to add our 2 SuperDuos like we did, and then continue around with the rest of our flower. So go ahead and make this chain as long as you need it for a bracelet, minus however much room your clasp is going to take up. And I usually give that about 1 inch or so. If you're using a lobster clasp like I am, about 1 inch, maybe a little bit less. Once you have your bracelet to the length that you need it, we're going to add the lobster clasp. You can add whatever clasp that you want, but I'm using a lobster clasp in this case because I like the size of it. It's a nice fit with the width and size of the bracelet. You want your thread to be coming out of the 8/0 where you would normally add the next flower. So we're coming out of that 4th 8/0 from the last connection point. I'm using a wire guard, and that's how I'm going to attach either end of my clasp. I have a jump ring here, and then I also have a lobster clasp that I've added onto another jump ring. Pick up one of your wire guards and just go through one side. And then you're going to take your thread and make sure that it sits in that little trough, or that little, just make sure it sits on top of the wire guard. And then we're going to go down through the next side of the wire guard. And as you pull your thread, make sure the thread catches on the wire guard and it's not sitting off to the side. You want your thread to sit in that sort of bridge there. And now before we attach our wire guard to the bracelet, we want to make sure that we're picking up one side of our clasp. So I'll go ahead and pick up this jump ring here attached to my lobster. And the lobster and jump ring will just sit and just hang in that wire guard. I'm going to pass through the 8/0 again, the same 8/0, so that the wire guard is situated sitting directly on top of that 8/0. I'm going to go back through my wire guard, up through one side, through my jump ring here, making sure that my thread sits in the wire guard, and then down through the other side of the wire guard, and through the 8/0 again. So at this point, my clasp is connected, and all I'm doing here is just adding some more thread running through the wire guard to reinforce that connection so it's stronger. And if you feel like you need to, you can do this another couple times, another 1 or 2 times, just to make sure that that thread is tight and secure in there, because this is where on your bracelet you're going to get the most wear and tear. So you're going to make sure that's secure. And now once you're done, all we're going to do is tie off our thread. So I go through a couple of these beads, and I take my thread and just do a little overhand knot around the thread that's already running through my project. And if you have a thread end, what I like to do is I like to take my thread and meet up with that thread end and tie the two together. So that's something else you can do if you've got a thread end close to where you're working. Just take those, tie them together. You can do a square knot here, which is just right over left and then left over right. And burn that down. On the other side of your clasp, you're going to do the same thing, but you'll just add a piece of thread, or you can also leave, if you have enough tail thread at the opposite end, you can thread that tail thread and use that. And there you have it. A beautiful little SuperDuo daisy chain. If you enjoyed this video, please comment below and let us know your thoughts. You can also subscribe to our channel to be notified as soon as we have more beading tutorials out that you will enjoy probably just as much as you enjoyed this one.